Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 595, and today's date is February 18th, 2015, and the title of this episode is, As the Collapse Accelerates, U.S. Government Central Bankers Provoke World War III. Let's get into the economic collapse news now. We're still having problems out in Greece with the Greek government and the ECB. They can't come to any type of decision, and sooner or later, because we know the deadline is coming up, that they're going to have to make a decision of what they're going to do. Right now, we see the ECB just boosted the Greek cash allotment to 68.3 billion euros. This is an increase of 3.3 billion euros, which means that the cat and mouse game between Greece and Europe will continue for one more week. After that, the government will run out of cash. Now, the Eurogroup is out there, and they're saying that in the end, in order to safeguard the banking system, capital controls will probably have to be imposed. And we knew this was coming. We knew they were shut down the banks. We knew that they would impose capital controls. We knew that they were going to eventually go in and access the people's money to bail out the banks. We knew this was going to occur, and we can see we're heading down this path here. And eventually this most likely will occur, and Greece is going to have to decide where and what they're going to do. Are they going with Russia, China, or with the ECB? But it seems like it's getting very, very difficult to negotiate with the ECB because they want their debt paid off. They don't want any write-downs because they're afraid that this will spread across the Eurozone. And every country who's in basically the same situation will ask for a debt write-off. And they don't want to give in. And we can see this is completely evident from how they're dealing with the situation. The central bankers, you have to remember, they have no allegiance to a country, to any people. Their allegiance is to their controlling the entire monetary system. What they do is they put countries into debt, they buy up their natural resources for pennies on the dollar, and they resell it back to the country once the country improves. And if the country doesn't improve, guess what? They sell it off to private corporations. They really don't care as long as they capture the natural resources of a country. And this is what they do. And once they have full control, they're happy. And we can see this is what is happening out in Europe to every single one of these countries. It's non-stop. Here in the United States, what do we see? Well, we see the government is continually putting out illusionary statistical numbers, at least those they can control, like GDP, inflation, unemployment. They can control the stock market to make everyone look over there and say, look, the stock market's reaching all-time new highs. They suppress oil, they suppress gold, to make it look like we're in this fabulous recovery. But when we look at real economic indicators about how the housing market is doing, about how retail is doing, how the real unemployment numbers do not match what the government is trying to convince us of. And we can see that, the economy is not doing well. We see that the producer prices final demand dropped by 0.8%. They were only expecting a 0.4% drop. So basically, it dropped a lot more. If we exclude food and energy, it doesn't matter because the PPI fell by 0.1%, missing expectations of a 0.1 rise. And excluding food and energy and trade services, the PPI fell 0.3%. So this is not happening because of the energy price drop like they want to convince us of. The PPI final demand saw its biggest month-on-month drop on record. Now we understand Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, they've introduced a new program where people have to put only 3% down. Actually, if you're going with a new house, a lot of the builders will make up that difference. They'll also give a mortgage to those people who have a heartbeat, all subprime people. They're doing the same thing as they're doing in the auto industry, and the auto industry is actually falling apart. Sales are starting to slow. We're seeing that people are delinquent on their payments. And we're seeing the same thing occur that happened back in 2007, 2008. This is all creating debt. People actually have no money and cars are being returned. Well, we can see with the housing market, the same thing is happening. And we knew this was going to happen going back a year or so. Actually, almost 2 years now, when the mortgage companies started laying off thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. And that trend continued all the way up to the present time, as of right now. And we've been tracking how mortgage applications have been doing. And they have cratered by over 13% after tumbling 9% in the week before. People are tapped out. The American everyday person is not looking to purchase a home. They're nervous, they're afraid, they don't feel secure in their job, and they realize from all the other information that's coming out that this recovery doesn't feel like a recovery. Even though the president is telling us we're in a recovery, it doesn't feel like it, because I have a job right now, and I'm putting out resumes. This is what the people are looking at, and I know from many, many people who have been telling me this, they cannot find another job at the same pay rate. A lot of times they put out the resume, they don't even get a response. And those they do get a response, interviews are never ever set up, and they're continually sending it out. And we can see by everything that's going on that things are starting to fall apart. The Census Bureau reported that in January, both housing starts and permits missed expectations. The reason? Yet another drop in single-family housing. Multifamily rental units, where the Fed is giving free money to hedge funds, investment companies, foreign investors, where they invest in cash and try to rent out these homes. They try to hold on to it to drive prices up. We see it is failing right now. They want to get out of the market. And we can see that they're still purchasing to try to prop up the market, but they're having a very tough time renting these homes. And when they're trying to unload them, it's becoming tougher and tougher. When I look around the country, what do I see? I see houses on the market, and the time frame is getting longer and longer, and people are dropping their prices dramatically. Not by 5,000, not by 10,000. I've seen drops of 50,000, 80,000, 100,000. Now, of course, it all depends on the price of the house, but these are huge drops. The traffic is drying up. And they're doing whatever they possibly can to continually prop up this market. But it's not going to work, because we've had the 2007-2008 crash, where it wiped out a lot of the people, where a lot of foreclosures occurred, short sales. People lost their jobs and they could never find the same job at the same pay rate. A lot of them couldn't even find the same job at all, and they've taken many different part-time jobs. People's credit have been ruined. If they had investment in the market, a lot of people lost that. And now there has been no recovery. The money the Fed continually created, sloshed around in the market, in Wall Street, and through the banks, never hit the people. Actually, if you look at it, the middle class, the poor, are getting poorer. It's getting worse for them. It's getting harder to survive. It's not getting better. I mean, they tried dropping the oil prices, thinking during the holiday season this was going to drive people to the stores to purchase goods. But guess what? It didn't work. We knew this wasn't going to work, because people are nervous. They keep the money, or they use the same money and they fill up their tank and they get a little bit of extra gas. That's it. Nothing else is going to occur. We also know they're using the suppression of oil to put pressure on Russia. There's many different agendas around the suppression of oil. We even have the Fed out there saying that persistently low energy prices could damp the overall expansion of economic activity for a period, especially if the slowing took place after most of the positive effects of lower energy prices on growth in household spending had occurred. So first they were out there saying this is a good thing. The lower fuel prices will spur economic growth, and now they're realizing, well, that didn't work. So we're going to have to give some type of an excuse of why it didn't work. And that's all they do. They're continually trying all different things to prop up the country. What they don't realize, because they're sitting on a different level than what the rest of the people are sitting on, they don't realize that people are struggling today just to get by. 44% just have enough money to reach 21 days in the month, just to pay their rent, their mortgage, their bills, and then they're out. So it is not working whatsoever. And now we have the strike out on the West Coast with the ports. Things on the West Coast ports are going from bad to worse, and with no resolution in sight. It is now beginning to cripple the U.S. economy. Truckers that haul an average of about 5 containers a day away from the Port of Oakland, California, are lucky to haul 1. At the Port of Oakland, truck drivers can spend up to 3 days waiting in line before hauling 1 container out of the yard. Levi Strauss & Company said it was concerned it wouldn't receive some products in time for spring deliveries. Honda Motor Company was experiencing part shortages in plants in Ohio, Indiana, Canada, and it will affect its production on multiple days over the next week. The delays could cost retailers alone about $3.8 billion this year. More and more distributors, retailers, producers, manufacturers, and everyday mom and pop stores, their shelves are empty. I've went into many different stores, and my wife said, hey, that's strange. How come all these shelves are empty? And we're starting to realize it's starting to take an effect on what is going on here. And we can see that this is going to hurt, again, the economy. Now, will they use this to blame what? Will they use the port strike to say, hey, this is why the economy's failing? This is why this is all happening. We were in a recovery, and look what happened. Now, is this a natural everyday strike? I'm not really sure about this. And we're going to have to wait to see how things actually turn out and how things actually go. I know there was, in the past, I think it was 2002, there was a port strike and it cost the economy billions of dollars. The same thing's happening right now. But if this continues, we're going to see empty store shelves. We're going to see problems, and this is why you need to be prepared, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen and how the collapse is going to occur. Now, is this going to happen tomorrow, the next day? No, nobody has a crystal ball to say when it's going to exactly occur. But what we do know is from everything that we're looking at that it is approaching. Just like back in 2005, 2006, when people reported, the collapse of the subprime credit is going to occur. People laughed. People said that's ridiculous. Even in 2007, even in 2008, when the Fed came out and said, hey, we're not forecasting any type of recession whatsoever. And of course, they said this in the year of 2008. And then we had a recession in 2008. And all of a sudden, companies were laying off left and right. All of a sudden, it just happened one day. And the same thing is going to occur. They're going to continually prop it up, try to cover everything up, just like they did in 2008. There's no difference here. And when they can't do it anymore and things start to fall apart, it's just going to happen. And of course, they're going to try to cover it up with an event by starting war. And they will blame this one on another country and group, or a combination of both, because they do not want to be blamed for this. They don't want the people knowing it was their fault, because what they think and what they understand is that when this is all said and done, they want to start the entire thing all over again. This is their plan. Because the system right now in the United States, the dollar, has reached the end, and it's time to reset it. And this is what they're doing. We see manufacturing production missed expectations of 0.4%. Capacity utilization printing at 79.4, missing expectations of a rise to 79.9. Industrial production missed expectations for the second month in a row. Motor vehicle production fell by 0.6% in January, and construction supply fell by 0.3%, the most in 10 months. And we can see why manufacturing and industrial production is falling apart. The Baltic Dry Index, which supplies the raw material to manufacturers, has fallen again 7 points. We are down to 509 points. And it's starting to take its toll all around the world. And in the United States. And of course, in the corporate media, they don't like to mention this whatsoever. They stay away from it. Anything that they can't put to their recovery story, which are the manipulated numbers, they kind of stay away from. They don't like to mention it that much. We understand the United States is hungry for revenue because the debt is so high, the interest on the debt is so high, they don't have enough revenue coming in. So they're looking everywhere they possibly can to bring in more revenue. And this is why they created FATCA. Basically, the IRS and FATCA are hunting people everywhere. This is part of the decline and fall of the United States. Whenever a government turns against its own people for taxes to sustain its life, the end is never far behind. The hunt for taxes is destroying everything. People just hoard and stop investing. One couple over the border between U.S. and Canada realized the following. One can only give up one's American passport after one has paid all back taxes, all late fees, all fines, all interest owing, and the fee for the privilege of giving up one's passport. Some of these figures can easily amount to many hundreds of thousands of dollars for a typical middle-class couple. The U.S. does not recognize foreign tax schemes such as RRSPs, Registered Retirement Saving Plans, or TFSA, tax-free saving accounts. These are fully taxable as income in its eyes. The U.S. does not recognize joint holdings. If at any time during a given year, bank accounts that held $10,000 or more, not $10,000 in each account, but $10,000 in total, all banking information needed to be supplied for the year in question. They want all the information about this money in the account. So basically, they're hunting down people and trying to take their money. Now, the United States is setting up military assets and pushing war all over the globe, and we see Russia and China instead are making deals. They're not moving military assets all over the world and garrison countries. No, they're out there making economic deals. Russia sees Hungary as a strategic partner and will pursue mutual beneficial energy projects. Both Hungary and Russia need each other and are interested in reliable gas supplies and transit. So they're signing several deals, and Russia has been doing this in South America, Central America, throughout Europe, in Africa. China has been doing the same thing. They're all over the globe. Now, of course, what happens is the United States government central bankers sees this, and they bring in military assets to each one of these regions, or they try to overthrow the regime in that country because they want the natural resources. This is what we've been seeing all throughout Africa, Central America, throughout the Middle East. It's all been the same plan. Now, we've talked about the illegals before and how the Obama administration just created a memorandum. A lot of people think it's an executive order, but actually it's a memorandum where DHS and all the governmental agencies, once the illegals come over the border, that's it. They're in the country. They get a work permit, driver's license, Social Security. They can get full benefits and everything else that comes along with it. Well, in a ruling late Monday, Judge Andrew S. Hanen said Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson was not just rewriting the laws, he is creating them from scratch when he wrote the amnesty, which could have granted tentative legal status, work permits, and Social Security numbers to more than 4 to 5 million illegal immigrants. Judge Hanen issued an injunction halting the program until he can hold a full trial. Mr. Obama, speaking to reporters in the Oval Office, said he would respect the judge's ruling, but predicted an eventual court victory and said the Homeland Security Department will be ready once courts approve his actions. The law is on our side, the president said, and history is on our side. NSA, DHS, FBI will now dig up the dirt on the judge or any other judge that is going to preside over the case. And they will use this dirt to blackmail the judge to rule in the favor of Obama. This is why he's so confident in coming out and saying this. This is why he's saying that, yes, you know what? We will win. Just like with Obamacare, all of a sudden, the judge that was looking at Obamacare continually said unconstitutional, unconstitutional, and then one day he said it was constitutional and he left on vacation for 2 weeks. He left the country. Why? Because they had something on him. They blackmailed him. And it seems that Obama is so confident right now that it's going to be overturned. It just seems like they already know what they're going to do. It's already planned. They already have the dirt, and they're ready to use it. Now, we understand that the government is continually spying on every single person here in the United States. And if you really think about it, there was a time where the government needed a warrant to actually spy on you because they were looking into a criminal investigation. And they were looking at criminals to see, yes, they are criminals. We need to tap their phone. We need to read their email. We need to listen in on the conversation in their home, so we'll set up some bugs. And we can see right now that they don't need this because of the Patriot Act. They don't need a warrant. So if you really think about this, they're treating us like we're all criminals, aren't they? Because this is exactly what they're doing. They're spying on every single person. And the way they look at it is everyone's a criminal, and we will catch someone in doing something. That's what they're doing at this point. And they have many different ways which they spy on you. And we discussed many of them in the past. But when we look at it, we see that there are many different ways, like Doppler radar devices, which can detect human breathing and movement within a home. Police have been using the Stingray devices mounted on their cruisers to intercept cell phones and text messages. License plate readers, yet another law enforcement spying device made possible through the funding of Department of Homeland Security. And a lot of these spying devices come through the Department of Homeland Security. They can read up to about 1,800 license plates per minute. Sidewalk and public space cameras sold to every single community, town, city, through DHS to make everyone believe that this will stop crime, which it does not whatsoever. Basically what it does, it monitors everyday people, and it allows it to be integrated into the facial recognition system so they can track every single person. They're using biometric and DNA databases. The smart appliances and electronic devices now connect to the internet, and they have the capability of interacting with each other, and the electric companies have the ability to turn them off whenever they want. The government is also using your phone, your computer, to turn on your microphone, your camera, to listen in on conversations. They're using social media like Twitter, Facebook. We already know they have firmware embedded in hard drive systems that were created by Seagate, Western Digital, IBM, and many others, where you cannot block this. They have implemented backdoors into Google, Yahoo, Facebook, you name it, it is there. Any way they can possibly spy on you, they have been using it because they want to know what everyone is doing. They're treating everyone like criminals. The Patriot Act is coming up for renewal. Among the portions of the Patriot Act set to expire on June 1st is Section 215, which gives the National Security Agency authority to collect domestic phone calls and authorizes the FBI to follow the digital and paper trails of suspected spies and terrorists. If the Patriot Act provisions runs out in June, the Bureau's power will go back to those it had in pre-9/11 days. It would likely need to obtain subpoena power from a grand jury to administratively provide justification for its surveillance actions. Basically, they need to get a warrant. So what this tells me, and which we already know, the Patriot Act, they're telling us, overrides the Fourth Amendment. But we know this is not true. The Fourth Amendment cannot be overwritten by a law because this is the law of the land. Nothing can come above it. And they're trying to convince us that yes, because some lawyer, some politician made the Patriot Act, it overrides the Fourth Amendment. No, it doesn't. They're in violation of the Fourth Amendment. They're in violation of every single person's rights. And personally, like I said with many bills, they call this the Patriot Act. How is this patriot when you're spying on every single person in the country? This has nothing to do with patriotism. This has to do with a police state. Now, yesterday we discussed how Kaspersky Lab revealed the spying software that has been hidden on some 500 computers in over 30 countries all over the world, targeting members of governments, financial institutions, among other victims. Just from the motives that we have seen from the consistency and quality, usage over time, we definitely think that this is a state-sponsored espionage. This is coming from Kaspersky. The highly sophisticated spying program detected by Kaspersky has been spreading malware on hard drives across the globe for about 2 decades. Whoever is behind it is well resourced. It has to be a group, a state-sponsored group. And right now they haven't linked the Equation Group to any organization which is controlling this, but pointed out the similarity between the program with the Stuxnet spyware allegedly used by the U.S. National Security Agency to infiltrate Iranian nuclear reactor systems in 2010. They're saying it is very, very similar. And we know this is all part of the NSA. This is basically what they're trying to tell everybody. That yes, it is the NSA. The NSA is attacking, spying. And if you notice over the last, 3-4 months, all of a sudden, cyber attacks just came out of nowhere, hitting all the stores, making everyone afraid, because they have cyber legislation that they want to pass. Every time we see something like this, all of a sudden, we get this huge amount of propaganda. We get a huge amount of attacks whenever they're trying to push some type of bill. When they're trying to push the gun legislation, we've seen a mass of shootings, all in a specific time frame, and then all of a sudden it dies down. And we don't see that anymore for a while, until it's brought up once again. We see this over and over and over. But we see the Obama administration is using backdoors to get at certain companies. Operation Choke Point is an initiative of the Department of Justice that was announced in 2013, which investigates bank interactions with certain businesses believed to be at higher risk for fraud and money laundering. And we know this is completely not the case. When first disclosed, it was heavily criticized for bypassing due process, with critics warning that its thinly veiled ideological attack on industries the Obama administration doesn't like, such as gun sellers, precious metal dealers, etc. Mike Maloney was out there explaining this, that his business was hit with this because he sells precious metals. And basically, there's no due process. All they say is, we suspect you. Let's cut off the banking from them and destroy the business. We see this with a lot of gun manufacturers. We see a lot with gun dealers, ammunition dealers, where all of a sudden the banks will no longer process the credit cards. And they don't have to prove anything. They don't have to go to court. This is a backdoor approach to shut down the businesses that they don't want operating. If they don't like it, bye-bye. That's all this is. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand the ceasefire is in place, and there's still battles going on there. There's still shelling going on. It has not stopped completely. But what's very interesting is that an Al Jazeera journalist who were going to cover the anniversary of the 2014 Kiev sniper shootings, they were denied access into Ukraine. They didn't want them reporting on anything that was going on there. And we know the BBC was out there, and they revealed that snipers were located in the opposition-controlled buildings. We knew this was set up, that the firing was coming from the coup d'etat people, the United States, that's set up with Blackwater and other paid mercenaries that were pushing the riots inside Ukraine. And it wasn't actually the government of Yanukovych at the time. So we can see right now they don't want this reported on, just like they don't want MH17 reported on. That just quietly went away because they know if anyone starts to dig into it, which we all know what has happened there, they'll find out that the U.S. and Ukrainian government, they were responsible for shooting down MH17. But they don't want anyone to notice, and this is why they kind of classified all the information. It is completely private. Now, here in the United States and a lot in Europe, we see the corporate media is out there, and they're blaming the ceasefire violations completely on the southeastern people. They're saying, they're continually firing, they're not stopping, they're not abiding by the ceasefire agreement. But of course, they do not give details about where the violations are coming from. Yes, they're reporting on Debaltseve, where they've surrounded the Ukrainian army. And of course, the Ukrainian armed forces are shelling that area, trying to have them released. And they're continually using propaganda to let everyone know the ceasefire deal is in violation, and it's because of the southeastern people, which is actually the opposite. It's actually Kiev is continually shelling because their people are surrounded, and most of the people that are surrounded in this area are paid mercenaries. A lot of them are outside forces from Poland, Croatia, U.S., England, and they want those people out of there. And this is why they're getting so nervous about this. And we see that the Donetsk people, they are withdrawing heavy artillery in line with the Minsk agreement. They are beginning to withdraw some of their equipment, and they want Kiev to follow on the other side. And we're going to have to see if Kiev actually starts to withdraw some of their heavy artillery. Last time, they did not do it whatsoever. They left it in place. So the Donetsk people left theirs in place. Now, in the Debaltseve area of Ukraine, we see the Kiev troops who are surrounded there are leaving the area. Basically, they surrendered en masse. But Poroshenko is out there, and he has announced a complete withdrawal from the contested city, where he radioed in and told them to start withdrawing. No, this didn't happen, because what we're seeing is that that whole entire area was surrounded. Communication was completely disabled. The Donetsk Republic leader was out there saying, well, Poroshenko couldn't have given them an order because we have been blocking their communication. Radio stations don't broadcast, phones don't work. There were no signals going in or out of this area. Everything was shut down. So there is no way an order from Poroshenko was able to get into this area. These people surrendered to us, and we're letting them go. This is exactly what has happened. But of course, Poroshenko, as he does so well, he lies. And this is what we've seen time and time again. Now, the DPR, they say they have complete control of the Debaltseve area, and they are controlling the entire region at this time. Kiev is not. Now, the OSCE is saying that they're going to bring in 6 convoys to monitor what has been going on in the Donetsk Republic. And they're going to bring all these in to monitor what's going on. Yatsenyuk is out there, and he wants Russia to pay for the war in Ukraine. He said, as for the reconstruction of the Donbass, I think it is logical to put the question of reparations to the Russian Federation. They destroyed the Donbass, and Russia should pay for the restoration of Donetsk and Lugansk, Yatsenyuk said. Earlier, Yatsenyuk said the amount of damage from the military actions in the east of Ukraine totaled about $8 billion. Well, you know what's going on here. They owe Russia billions of dollars for their gas. Any way the central bankers can get out of owing this money, they're going to try it. But we have to remember, the coup d'etat was brought on by the US and EU. They created all that damage in the Donbass region by going after the southeastern people because they did not agree with the puppet regime that was put in there, which were basically central bankers, friends of friends, to control the region. Crimea was voted away. The southeastern people wanted the same thing. But again, this is the production area, and of course, the U.S. government central bankers could not let this happen, and this is why they called them terrorists and created an anti-terrorism force. So basically, this whole entire blame should be on the EU and the US because they're the ones who created this mess. And it is a complete mess because look what happened in this country. The economy fell apart. People are being sent off to war. The country is split apart. And the people are rising up at this time. They want their country back. They don't want to go to war. So because of the Minsk agreement and how Russia, France, and Germany all got together and put together a peace deal, Canada decided, since we're pushing peace right now, we should have sanctions against Russia. And the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, has issued a statement announcing fresh economic sanctions and travel bans against 37 Russian and Ukrainian individuals and economic sanctions against 17 Russian and Ukrainian entities over their alleged role in the escalation of the situation in Ukraine. Which completely doesn't make any sense. Let's wait to see if the peace process works. Now, most likely it won't because we have the central bankers there who are going to try everything and anything to get the war started. They don't want peace. Most likely they will try a false flag event inside Ukraine to push the war forward. I mean, we have U.S. Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham out there stating, the ceasefire has failed. Let's bring in the lethal weapons. Let's move and push this war forward. What are we waiting for? We can see right now they want this and they want the war bad. If they want it so bad, let them go to the front lines and fight with the troops in Ukraine. There we go. Bring your families if you want war so bad. That should be something that we needed to add on when we remove the present government and we put in a new government. Whoever wants war goes to the front line with their families. And we'll see how much they call for war at that point in time. And there's no way out of it. You can't take a different position like, being a medic. No, you're going to the front line. You'll be the first one off running into battle. And we see out in Ukraine there is about 400 protesters that have gathered near the Ukrainian parliament building in Kiev. The demonstrators are chanting, all deputies are separatists. Give back our money. And, of course, these people are out there and they're sick and tired of this government. And we're going to see more and more of these protests occur. And, of course, every time a protest occurs, the government comes out with full police force and brings and pushes them back. Now, in the past, when the people wanted a different government, like the United States said, they want freedom, they want democracy, they should be heard. But now when they're saying, we don't want this government in here, they're silenced. And this is the way the U.S. works. Now, U.S. Navy Rear Admiral Charles Williams says the U.S. is preparing for an annual joint drills with South Korea starting in March. The U.S. littoral combat ships are designed to operate in coastal areas, but are also capable of conducting operations in the open ocean and defeating threats such as mines, diesel submarines, and fast service craft. So the U.S. is going to deploy 4 warships in Singapore's coastal area. That's what they're looking to do. The State Department right now is moving military assets all throughout Europe. The government officials in the United States say the White House is readying to announce a policy change that will let armed unmanned aerial vehicles or weaponized drones legally be given to allied nations. Yes, because they're moving all these military assets to all the different areas because they know what's coming. They know there's going to be a full-blown war. They know there's going to be riots in every single country. And they want everything in place. And this is exactly what they're doing right now. Now, Italy is out there, and we know the Middle East is falling apart. We know Libya, the government basically has fallen. Yemen, the government has fallen. Lebanon's still in battle. Iraq is still in battle. But we can see things are rapidly falling apart. And Italy is screaming out there, saying that the Libyan militias, the new government in Libya, is going to merge with the Islamic State. This is all propaganda. They're trying to make everyone believe that we need to go back into Libya. And we knew this was going to happen. And here we are today. I mean, back when we were saying this, people were like, you're crazy. That doesn't even make sense. Look what's happening right now. They're looking to go back into Libya. Right now, Italy is so worried, they're putting 500 soldiers on the streets amid fears of an Islamic State attack. And they're protecting all different areas. They're also mobilizing 5,000 strong military force to fight the Islamic State in Libya. We are getting prepared to see a major offensive in the Middle East. We understand the United States already brought in 4,000 troops to Kuwait. Military assets are being pumped into Kuwait, into different depots. We see many other coalition countries bringing in troops. And Obama's just waiting for the authorization for war. And if Congress does not vote yes, something will happen to convince them to vote yes. Now, right now, the U.S. intelligence community continues to see President Assad as winning the war against the Sunni rebels in Syria. In Syria, we assess the conflict is trending in the Assad regime's favor. And the regime holds the military advantage in Aleppo, Syria's largest city, and we anticipate that in 2015 the regime strategy will be to encircle Aleppo, cut the opposition supply lines, and besiege the opposition. But the Pentagon agency said Assad would continue to receive strategic support from Iran and Russia. So they're very nervous that Syria is going to beat the Free Syrian Army. And we can see right now they have surrounded Aleppo. And NATO and UN desperately seek ceasefire to save the Islamic State / Free Syrian Army, which is basically one and the same, because the United States can't come out there and say, listen, we're funding the Islamic State, we're giving them weapons. So what they do, and it's a very tricky thing, is they say, no, we're training the Free Syrian Army, all new soldiers, we are giving them weapons, and they defect right over to the Islamic State, because right now the Islamic State isn't as big as everyone thinks. It's very, very tiny. Those numbers they continually spew off are basically the people rising up in each one of these countries. The Islamic State is a small band of paid mercenaries that are running around the country, and they're building up the amount in the Islamic State by training the Free Syrian Army. And then they defect right over. This is how they're doing it. And right now, Obama is going to allow the Syrian rebels to call in airstrikes, B-1B bombers. And basically what they're doing is the White House has decided to provide pickup trucks equipped with mounted machine guns and radios for calling in U.S. airstrikes to some moderate Syrian rebels, aided by American B-1B B-1B bombers. Now, we already know the Islamic State has some of these because they're one and the same. Basically, when they get this equipment, the Free Syrian Army will defect, and that equipment will just flow over to the Islamic State. This is what they want to happen. Just like we've seen all these airdrops supplying the Islamic State, and the U.S. goes, oh, that was a mistake. No, it wasn't. The planes would drop about 500 to 2,000 pound guided bombs, a typical load for the B-1s that have operated in Afghanistan as well as Syria. Using the B-1 sniper pod, which allows the aircrew to precisely target moving objects, the crew could target tanks, motorcycles, and other moving objects. So right now we can see the Islamic State has the ability to call in airstrikes because they're getting ready for a major offensive. They're trying to push back the Syrian Army. This is what this is all about. Now, there is intel coming in, and it seems Egypt has been interrogating some Islamic members that they've captured in recent weeks. And they are saying that Islamic State is planning ground offensives this spring and summer aimed at taking over more territory across the Middle East and the Persian Gulf. Some of the information indicates the new offensive will not be limited to the Arab world. They're saying that these attacks will also include Europe and the United States. That they will activate cells in each one of these countries. And this is what the European governments, the United States, CIA, MI5, MI6, Mossad, they're all in place to carry out the main event. And they're continually building this up. If you look over time, you can see they're continually building up the story that the Islamic State is bad. They're scary terrorists. They're the boogeyman. And they're continually doing this over and over and over until they get the people convinced. They're doing the same with Russia. Now they're convincing everyone that they have cells all over the country. So when this false flag event occurs, people say, it is the Islamic State. It is Russia that cyber-attacked the financial institutions. It is China. It's North Korea. Because they've been doing this for a while, and they're trying to convince and create a story to go along with what's going to happen. And all of this is to cover up the economic collapse. And this is where we are headed right now. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.